English accent.
Yeah. Hi. Oh, hello there. It's Franz Kantor here, and I'm here with...
Jolly good show.
Jim Bridges, and we're at the Cartoon Museum, and we're going to do another drawing.
Jolly good show.
Hopefully...
Sizzling sausages, Bertie.
So, who are we doing? We're doing this guy. You might say, who is that guy? That's Peter Cushing. So Peter Cushing is an English actor. There he is in Star Wars as Grand Moff Tarkin with Darth Vader. This is one of his, 1979, that's with his mate, Christopher Lee.
Really? Is that him there?
Yeah.
He looks like...
grizzled.
No, but he looks like the guy in The Sound of Music. What's his name? Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
You got dirt in his face.
Yeah. This is him in the Gorgon.
And that's the Gorgon behind him. That's the Gorgon behind him.
That's Patrick Troughton. I just wanted to put that image in because you've got two doctors. One a cinema doctor and one obviously the TV series doctor, Patrick Troughton, who's Doctor Who number 2. This is a very famous shot of him of Arthur Grimsdyke from Tales from the Crypt.
On a bad day.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good story. I love that story. This is Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. You could see he's in quite a lot. This is in She.
Yeah, I saw that
1965.
the other night. I saw that the other night.
Yeah, with Bernard Cribbins.
Yeah.
And this is from, I believe this is from The Horror of Dracula. It's 1956.
Well, look, is that an F on his tie?
I don't know.
Is that a Frankenstein tie?
Not sure.
But
you can see
he play Dr. Frankenstein in that film?
No, in Dracula he plays Helsing, Van Helsing.
Oh, okay, Van Helsing.
The vampire hunter.
Okay.
So, so this is why am I doing this Goomba? Why am I doing him?
Well, because you love Hammer movies.
I love Hammer horror.
Yeah.
I'm a Hammer horror enthusiast. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just explain very quickly. I've done a little thumbnail here, and I've transposed the thumbnail to, this is toned paper, so we're going to have a look at this. Drawing three-dimensionally on toned paper with 3 colour pencils. A brown pencil, a white pencil, and a black pencil.
He looks more like, what's his name? The American actor who played...
You'll think of it in a minute.
I will. I'll just go away in the corner and have
the shape
my
is going to be a
open.
Dorito. It's going to be a Dorito shape, right? So the idea is to break down something hard like a head into something simple like a chip, right? So it's really exploring the simplifying the difficult, making it easy. So when you look at drawing, the easiest things to draw are like simple shapes. So everything that you draw, it doesn't matter how hard it is, how difficult it is, it all comes down to the way that you approach it. So rather than looking at all of the scary bits, all of the little details, approach it simply first, like creating a simple shape and then interpreting that shape and just sort of layering details into the shape itself. So the idea of caricature is always to sort of bend things a little bit so that you've got a flexible approach to creating faces, right, with recognizable features. And it's all about the inventiveness of caricature, right? The ability to have a sense of play in the forms that you're playing with. So rather than sticking to a more naturalistic approach to drawing the face, you're actually using all of the rules that you would apply to naturalism. For example, perspective and proportions and things, light and shade, to describe form, etc. But now you're having a fun with it because you're sort of using a combination of exaggeration and simplification. Simplification is reducing things down to simple forms, simple shapes, and then, of course, exploring possibilities of distortion and exaggeration. Yeah, spitting image. Okay, so with the form here, we're going to concentrate on the eyes and the nose and the mouth, which is they form a sort of a mask zone or a T-zone, as you sometimes refer to them. And that's going to be our area of dialogue, if you will, with the pencil. So all of these elements have to relate to one to the other. Okay, they build up a sort of a dialogue with one another. The other thing to consider is light. So the light source is coming down from the top right, which means that it's going to create a sense of shadows on the bottom left. Okay, it's very simple to understand that. We'll talk more about that process as we get into the face itself. So I've gone a little bit overboard with the details of just creating. I wanted to get this sort of chip shape, the bulk of the mass at the top, and then sort of trail down to the chin. And obviously the nose is going to be quite strong.
What chin?
It's going to be a strong element as well, because that's a central thing. The eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Okay, so let's proceed. And as we go, we may discover things that interest us about this face. What does it tell us? With the lines that are formed in the face itself from the expressions and from the way that he uses those expressions. So all of these lines reflect, obviously, thoughts and emotions that play over time on the geography of the features of the face itself.
What film is that?
This
source
is from.
from?
That's a very good discussion point. This is from one of my favourite Hammer films, and indeed my favourite Peter Cushing Hammer film, which is Frankenstein Created Woman. So instead of what's the saying? God Created Woman, which is the
Frankenstein,
the Brigitte Bardot film.
Yeah.
This is Frankenstein Created Woman. So God didn't create woman. Frankenstein created woman. So it was like mid-60s, 66, I think, and introducing a new aspect to the Frankenstein story, the idea of a soul, of capturing the soul and transferring it with some device, sort of electrical device.
I think that's pushing it a bit.
Yeah.
They haven't even found out where the soul is yet.
Well, rather than transplanting brains,
Yeah.
he's now transplanting souls or essences.
High tech.
Well, it's more spiritual.
High tech.
So it's a more spiritual approach to the Frankenstein theory. The story of transplanting brains. So it's an interesting diversion from the original story.
They also did
And
around
it was
about
the only time they did that.
Hammer also did around about the time, didn't they? Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde, didn't they?
That was a little bit later. That was another. Hammer likes to push the envelope as far as the horror stories or the classic stories were concerned. I mean, you've got to remember that they pumped out a lot of films.
They pumped out a lot of films.
Yeah, a lot of films.
I remember,
there were other companies.
I remember looking at they seem to have large rooms in the sets.
Well, harkening back to the sets from Universal, like the Frankenstein.
Well, they were castles and stuff like that. But
yeah,
I remember in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and a few other films, they seem to have very large rooms where you could swing several thousand cats around.
Yeah.
And of course, you're watching the film and you have this deja vu feeling, like I've seen where they walk down those stairs before.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that would
did Hammer have their own studios, or did they?
They used different studios. They used Elstree and
Elstree is the one I remember.
Pinewood. I think they used different studios at different things. Indoor, outdoors. Like if they want the moors or something.
Who was the man behind Hammer? Who was the one who financed it?
That I'm not sure about. That you can Wikipedia.
Okay.
That little. Thing, but there's some all right, they had fair budgets, I think, for the time, and they're able to create like their own sort of film language almost with Hammer Film, a combination of the music, usually very loud, so you got the big crescendos of orchestrated
I always
music.
got the feeling that British films were
Loud.
done cheaply.
Yeah. Some of them were.
Except for, most of them were. They seem to be done
Well,
cheaply.
we're looking at the...
Except for the big things like the big musicals like Oliver and things like that.
Yeah. Well, some of them were, no doubt, like the Carry On films, I think, notoriously were delivered under budget. They were very cost-effective to the point of ripping off the actors. I think...
the actors had to bring in their own clothes and all that sort of stuff.
Did they? I
don't know.
That.
I don't know, Master.
I don't know the exact...
Well, you've got into his penetrating eyes immediately.
Yeah, so he's a very accomplished actor. So he communicates with his face and his eyes.
He invented laser beams, didn't he? That guy with his eyes.
The thing with this whole premise, what they're trying to do, they're trying very, very hard to out Universal horror films, and they did this in a couple of ways. They made the characters more visceral, more physical. So,
they did it with colour too, of course.
Well, colour, yeah, but then the colour was very controlled too. It wasn't, it's not like it wasn't like the 1980s. It was very, very subdued colour. So,
except for the red, the blood.
Well, they had, horror. You know, the whole idea of it was to increase the sense of horror and the sense of dread in the characters, so that you can actually feel physically scared from Dracula on screen. You know, he had a presence that wasn't there. Christopher Lee had a certain presence that Bela Lugosi didn't have.
Oh yeah, he had a power too.
Had a danger, raw danger.
Yeah, he had a physical power, scary power about him. Well, in the sense that, like, it was physicality. Like when Chris played Rasputin.
Yes,
he's throwing people around like they're rag dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was a very tall man too.
Yeah.
But,
very tall.
But him and
operatic.
These, Christopher Lee and this guy were like the Laurel and Hardy of British horror, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, he was in a Laurel and Hardy film. He was in Chumps at Oxford. Played one of the students.
How old? When was that?
It would be in the 20s, I think.
No.
Wouldn't it?
30s.
30s, there you go.
So what? Cushing goes back that early?
Yeah. Well...
because we're talking 60s and 30s, that's 30 years later. He's doing Hammer.
Well, okay, we'll just sort of go through his... He did television films.
This interlude is brought to you by Wikipedia.
Yeah, so, Man in the Iron Mask, 1939. Chump at Oxford, 1939. And then it goes up to, let's jump a bit to Curse of Frankenstein, 1957.
Ah, yeah, late 50s, yeah. She was 62 or 3, was it?
Yeah, Dracula was 1958. So Frankenstein, he played Dr. Frankenstein before he played Abraham Van Helsing.
Yeah.
And he went through not reinventing the Universal horror series, but they went through it all. They did The Mummy, they did The Hound of the Baskervilles, Frankenstein, Dracula. The only thing they didn't do was the Creature from the Black Lagoon. They did The Wolfman.
Did they?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He was in a wolf, the Wolfman. He was in what was it?
I don't remember them doing Wolfman.
Yeah, no, he's in a lot of. He's in hundreds of films.
Yeah.
I don't even know the name of it now. It's I can't find it for the moment. But he plays the same character. Dr. Van Helsing is Dr. Frankenstein,
Yes,
Victor Frankenstein.
yes,
So there's a certain familiarity in the characters that he plays.
I remember the first time I saw him, I thought he was a living reincarnation of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, well, he played Sherlock Holmes really well.
But I really thought he looked more like Sherlock Holmes
than Sherlock Holmes.
Than Basil
Rathbone. Yeah.
Rathbone did.
Yeah, a lot of people said that. You know, he had that ability to, like a chameleon, to fit into all of these different roles, all of these different things. But he made it his own.
Oh, yeah.
It was his own version.
Yeah.
So there was a certain familiarity with his performance, you know. But even saying that, he had the ability to tell stories with his acting. He had like if you watch him on screen, especially compared to, I was going to say Vincent Price, comparing him to any of the other actors, comparing him to, say, Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Christopher Lee has a single purpose, and you know it's obvious with the characters that he plays, whether it be the rambling, you know, the shambling creature from Frankenstein, or the mummy, or to something a little bit more articulate as Dracula himself, you know. And Dracula, I think in the first film he didn't speak at all, but I think in the second film he did a little bit.
Well, Cushing had this really gentleman, educated look. It's looked like, you know...
Yeah.
He stayed on at Oxford and did a lot there, you know. I mean, he's perfectly cast as an expert on Egyptology or anything like that.
Yeah,
you know?
very believable. But he would import these different peculiarities, little things like he would roll, you know, a lighter in his hand as Van Helsing, or a cross or something.
I remember
he would play with
his
things
use of his hand
as props.
Yes, was very good.
Yeah.
Was very good. He'd sort of roll it over his hands like he was making. He was using
thinking about it. Yeah,
but also making the prop in his hand actually
part of the story.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
and almost playing with it to sort of find the right word to express it and stuff. I remember that as a kid, looking at his hands, and of course, in this particular, he's got rubber gloves on.
He has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, I mean, he every role that he visits, he'll bring something different to the role. He'll bring a different prop or a peculiarity or a trait.
You know, he's very interesting too, because he has a star presence, but he doesn't dominate like Christopher Lee did. You know what I mean? He has a way of standing in the background.
Yes,
not totally dominating, you know?
Yeah, it's a more of an intellectual presence rather than a physical.
In he plays the most intelligent person. There's the young bloke, and then there's the Bernard Cribbins, who is the go-to sort of servant.
Yeah.
And he is the most...
The gentleman's gentleman.
Yes. But at the same time, you know, he doesn't dominate the film. And yet he's the most intelligent person in the film. He's the most, like, the person you would go to when you got scared of what's going to happen next, you know?
Yeah.
They get up to all sorts of adventures in that film.
Yeah, well, he's the reason. He's the professoriate.
Well, he starts off like that, but then it moves over to the younger bloke, who was smitten by the she character, which is Ursula Andress. In her green feather dress and her gold, her gold fairy wings in her head.
Yeah, but you know, it's like the emotion that he brings to it, and it's incredible. You have pathos. At the same time, he plays this. Like, for example, let me just explain. His character of Frankenstein, because he's best known for Dr. Frankenstein more than.
Well, not really.
You don't think so?
No, I mean, everybody knows him as the guy in Star Wars, because Star Wars is, you know, 5 billion people more have seen that film than the Hammer films. I mean, you and me know him as that, but most people, it's like Alec Guinness. He'll always be Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, although he, you know. Lawrence of Arabia, all those incredible films. I mean, some of the films he played 8 roles, you know. Kind Heart and Coronets and...
Yeah.
So to a whole generation, he is the guy from Star Wars.
Yeah.
But go on.
No, well, I was going to say that...
this is just a generational thing.
Well, I don't know, maybe. I think people just, should see more Hammer horror films. There's a certain style to his character of Frankenstein, which is better than anyone else's Doctor Frankenstein.
But just looking at his facial features,
there's an arrogance and a superiority.
Yes,
and he just does it so well that you just love him for it. You know, it's just brilliant.
But he physically looks like he's trained in a concentration camp because he looks so...
Well, he looks frail.
Yeah, it looks frail, but so thin.
Yeah, but his
superiority,
your sense of superiority and anger.
Yeah,
really.
Your caricature, for instance, is really expressing that because, like, the lower jaw, it's like half the size, isn't it?
Mm. Well, I just want to focus more on his.
No, but I'm saying in the photo, look,
eyes.
It looks like he's got, you know, you can actually see the shape of the skeleton there in the face.
Well, there's
and those jaws. I mean, those cheekbones. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very
prominent. Spend a lot of time looking at him at the movies, looking at his cheekbones.
Yeah, well, I think everybody has at some stage.
And the other thing is when these guys have to carry a woman, you know, especially a younger woman who's probably just as tall as them, they tend to
the damsel pick up the damsel.
He didn't seem to have any trouble, whereas the other guys, they shot the cameras in certain ways that it looked like that he wasn't carrying them and all that, you know.
Well, I don't know about that. He just I think Christopher Lee carried quite a lot of...
Oh, but he was a big, strong man.
Yeah.
How tall was Christopher Lee? He always seems a giant to me.
Yeah. I don't know how tall, but yeah, he's pretty big.
I mean, even in his 80s, in those Lord of the Rings films, he's pretty scary and pretty powerful and pretty tall.
Yeah. I think it was a little bit less in the last Lord of the Rings and you know, consequently in the Star Wars
didn't have much to go, did he?
Count Dooku, but I
mean, in his private life, I watched a video a couple of months ago about Peter Cushing, and he had his favourite pub, and he'd go there and have his lunch.
Yeah,
and he was,
he was an Englishman.
He was an Englishman. That's exactly.
They like their comfort. They like their regularity. You know, the same waitress and things like that, the same cup of tea, same cup. So, yeah, slippers.
And his cup of tea.
He would go on set in his slippers.
Oh, yeah?
If they're out of shot...
he wearing slippers?
Yeah, he wears slippers because I think the comfort aided in his ability to perform in character. You know, he was a businessman.
Like all these people in Zoom today, they're running around with just clothes on the top.
This was his business, this was his profession, and he was a professional actor.
Did he write like all some actors? Or I mean, I don't know nothing about his private life, really.
I don't know about the writing. I never really...
No, I mean, he didn't write or anything, did he? Like Dirk Bogarde and talk about his
memoirs?
Life. Yeah, he didn't do that, did he?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think he did one book, but I've never been, other than his performance on film, I've never really followed up.
Well, his performances were faultless. I mean, he just turned in good performances all the time, didn't he?
Yeah, but that's the thing. You have to do that with this genre, because if you don't, the audience has left you. They just walk out of the cinema. And, you know, you don't have the physicality of Christopher Lee. Like, they'll just watch Christopher Lee, you know, glowering with his red eyes, contact lenses.
Throwing at people across the sets.
Yeah, including him. But, so he never had that. But he had this intensity of purpose, especially with Frankenstein, with Dr. Frankenstein when he played that. He was a nasty. He was a murderer. You know, it was like a selfish, self-centered murderer.
So,
I loved him.
I should check out.
He was awesome.
The film where he creates a woman. Frankenstein creates a woman. That's his best film.
I like it because it diverges away from the Frankenstein story into this concept of soul, of you know, instead of transplanting brains, he actually transplants personalities.
I can imagine him actually. I haven't seen the film, but I can imagine him actually talking about the soul. He was
apparently a religious man, so you know he had a lot of I think issues playing somebody that was obviously so self-centered and you know, I mean, you could say evil, I guess, Dr. Frankenstein. But I never regarded him as evil. I regarded him as this incredible single purpose at all cost, you know, and nothing will stop him.
Yeah, he just seems like
he's going to create life and that's it.
Yeah, he was just driven, totally driven.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about it because, you know, you look at Dr. Frankenstein and all of the other films and they're all wishy-washy compared to him. You know, I mean, they've had some great stars. They've had
the first guy,
James Whale.
Pretty awful, wasn't
it? James Whale?
It's alive! It's alive!
Yeah, I mean,
what was his
sort
name?
of.
What was his name?
Was it James? No, not James Whale. That was
he
the
directed
director.
it. Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
I only saw him in a couple of movies after that. He was a character actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, primarily.
Well, primarily he's a character actor.
Yeah, but he honed it pretty
real
good,
characters.
didn't he?
Yeah, but he owned those characters. Yeah. The ones that he created, you believed them. You know, no matter what the premise was, you believed them. Even silly films like, you know, the Jules Verne stuff. What was it? The At the Earth's Core or something. You know.
Oh, that's right. He was at the Earth's Core. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not Jules Verne. That's
I think it is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. He can take credit for it. But yeah, people just loved it because he made a difference. He oversold the character and the premise. You know, I mean, when he was scared of something on screen, you're terrified, and when he was angry, he was he's like, okay, well, Christopher Lee will kill you straight away. He will throttle you, strangle you, or bite you, or something like that.
Yeah.
But this guy will get even in ways that you have no idea. He'll end up taking your brain, and that's probably worse. So you just had a feeling that, you know, he was a total evil, selfish, self-centered.
You wake up one morning, where's my soul? Where's my soul?
Yeah,
my soul's gone. Where is it?
You know, I mean, for him to do, such a nice guy, for him to do that.
He's such a nice guy. Yeah.
Well, he was in real life, but for him to do that and have that ability to make you believe that those traits in the character was magic. You know, the best part of Frankenstein was not the monster. The best part of Frankenstein was him. And that's something that the other films never had.
It just stands to reason you've got more to play with. You know, the character, he's intelligent, he's flawed, and all that stuff. You know, the monster's just
but he doesn't
shambling.
See it as a flaw. The selfishness is a flaw. He doesn't see it as a flaw. Yeah. He sees it as a virtue. If you watch his performances and just sort of get into those scenes, you know, those the silliness of it, like, you know, transferring essences, transferring souls, etc., like in Frankenstein Created Woman. You know, it's obvious
in that film. Who was the woman? Ingrid Pitt?
No. Denberg, Nita Denberg.
Oh, I'd be a blonde.
Yeah, she was a model,
Mm.
but she gave a really good performance. To her credit, she was very convincing, and she did a good job. You've got see that's the thing with these films. You've got to really sell them because it's crucial. You know,
Well,
that's
they were
why.
supercharged films. I remember they just seemed like they're really hyped up.
Well, they are.
They're
I
all
mean, you
hyped
listen
up.
to the music; it's just
Yeah.
like completely over the top, dramatic
Yeah.
orchestration.
Right from the word go, you just knew
You're in a Hammer film because
Yeah.
you can't talk. You can't talk in the cinema. You're stuck.
Yeah.
If your phone goes off in the cinema, you'll never hear it.
They didn't have phones in those days.
Yeah.
So, what's the period of Hammer films? From the 50s to the mid-60s? Or
Yeah.
So 10 years?
Yeah. No. Till
Late 60s?
it would be till like 1974, something like that.
Okay. About 15 years? Good
Yeah,
run.
so early 70s.
Yeah.
From
And of course
the mid
of course
50s.
They remade their own films.
Yeah,
didn't
from the
they?
mid 50s.
They remade their own films, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, they had. What do you mean they remade them?
Well, they like about 5, 6, 7 years later, they remade the films. They updated it. The films they made. I remember a couple of. They're all not new stories all the time. I mean, how many Frankensteins and Dracula films did they make?
Yeah, but they're not redos. They're
No, but they went back to the characters. What I'm saying, they went back to the characters.
sometimes, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it seemed like that they were making.
I mean,
more
their last Dracula film was The Satanic Rites of Dracula, which was right after the last film that they were going to ever make of Dracula, which was called Dracula Today or Dracula 1972.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was done in 1972, and the Satanic Rites of Dracula. Sorry, my voice is trailing off. I just went to pick up the.
So they also did the Hellfire Club. Remember that?
I think that was another studio that
Was
did
it?
that. Yeah. I can't remember. I can double check.
Very naughty. That
Sort of
film.
interrupt.
I was shocked as a child. Lots of debauchery going on. Wasn't quite sure what debauchery was, but I knew it was going on. You know.
Yeah. So let's get some.
I mean, he spends about what? He's about
contrasts.
2 minutes on
happening.
screen in the Star Wars film. You know, but he's
Well, look, he doesn't get killed by Darth Vader.
no,
so
but he
there's
seems to
there's
be
a
the only
plus.
one who's not scared of him. They're all scared of Darth Vader, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's the only one in the film who's not scared of him. You know.
Yeah. I think he kind of knows his place. So sort of, it's not something. Darth Vader's not someone you keep pushing that. You don't keep pushing that button. Eventually, he'll choke you out.
Yeah, but Darth Vader would have. I mean, you get the impression that Darth Vader would have used him. You know, because he was so good at what he did. You know.
Well, he was the bad guy with the Death Star, so he was like the boss of the Death Star. It was his baby, I guess. I'm going to try and. There's a lot happening in this picture. A lot of, regarding texture. There's a lot of beautiful textures in here that I'm going to try to capture with the contrasts of light and shade. Some good stuff here. Okay, well, let's hit it with some white pencil. So some of my other favourite of his stuff, obviously, Horror of Dracula, which is 58. Frankenstein was 56, I believe. That was fantastic.
Were those
kind of
were those early 50 films in black and white?
no,
They were always in colour.
yeah,
Okay.
they were beautiful colour. They were like the early days of Technicolor were really, really vibrant and not overly colourful, but very intense colours. So that, I'm talking like not red, but burgundy blood. So it's really rich.
In Australia, got a lot of British films, and there was a theatre which called the Grosvenor, which is now an actual hotel. It's on the side of the Melbourne Town Hall, up Little Collins Street, I think. And I used to go there every second Saturday to see a British film.
Yeah.
And most of them were always in black and white.
Yeah. They have a long tradition of black and white films. But then you see something like Kind Heart and Coronets, which is in colour. And then you start to see what the British can actually do with colour. And it was extraordinary. It's, it's not vibrant,
I reckon
bright, garish colours. They were rich.
They're, I'm just trying to think. Black Narcissus is one of my favourite colour films.
Yeah, there you go. That's
British.
Yeah, so
that's Michael Powell and Pressburger, and they also did Red Shoes, which is pretty garish, the colour, but it's a pretty intense movie.
Yeah. It's important, I think, to think about the history of cinema and the early colour experiments. Like you could see some old footage of, Nazis or something in World War II in the 30s, and some of the early experiments with Kodachrome and things.
Yeah, which in German. Yeah.
Looking at it, it seemed very colour limited. It had like a hue, like a blue-red sort of shift, or like a.
Do you know any story about how he got the gig on Star Wars? I mean, it was shot in London, and
no.
So he's being British. A lot of. Yeah. Okay.
Other than
he wasn't. I mean, like what's his name?
Story?
The director. What's his name?
Lucas.
Lucas wasn't a fan, was he?
Yeah, he was a fan.
Oh, okay. So.
Yeah. No, he was a fan.
Okay.
And he would have. I mean, Alec Guinness. He was a friend of Alec Guinness's. So it's just wanted legitimate performances.
Well, Alec Guinness can turn in. I mean, we did a film on caricature, remember? And somebody did a caricature of him with a completely empty face, with his eyes and ears, his nose and his mouth outside his head.
All right.
They're inferring that he could play any role. They've just put them together.
Yeah, it's like assemble your own.
Role.
Guinness.
Yeah, your own character. Because he could do that. But this guy would have been definitely typecast in horror, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah.
Or bad guys.
You can't help but that. You can't help that to happen. But even within that genre, there was a lot. I mean, we've got to remember too, there were 3 or 4 companies that pumping out horror films at the same time as Hammer Horror. These were very popular in England, and I think they had a thing in England called an X certificate, which anything horrible would be under an X certificate, and it wasn't as scary as the R certificate in Australia. So everybody, no one cared. They just went to see it, were rewarded for the experience by, performances such as his. He was a great asset to that genre, because you got to have, it's so weird and outlandish, these stories and premises, that you got to have somebody overselling the premise. Otherwise, you're not going to believe it. It's just impossible.
Yeah, but you'd believe him because he seemed to be the real thing. He seemed to be the real thing, you know.
Yeah.
He seemed to be a real professor, a real scientist, a real
doctor. He owned that. Yeah, he had that ability to, make you feel that he was a real doctor, that he knew surgery and things like that.
Well, so much of cinema relies upon,
make believe.
Yeah, suspension of reality, and if you don't get your transitions right, or you don't have certain people in it that anchor it, it just doesn't work. And he'd obviously anchor it.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's pivotal in the stories. More so than any monster.
So how did they actually visually take souls in that film?
They used
did you see light or something?
Yeah,
a ball of light
like
in his
sunray
hand or
lamp.
something?
No, it was just in a way, yeah. It was just sort of using a sunray lamp and a box, but and sound effects.
The old sound effects.
Yeah, the dynamos and stuff. The build up of energies and things.
With all the stuff
crackling. They brought back a lot of that. Bzz, the arc lights from 1933's Frankenstein. They brought that back.
Yeah.
In the in the lab.
I know that sound.
Whereas before in Frankenstein, if you ever watched Horror of Frankenstein, or any of the Frankenstein films up until Frankenstein Created Woman, they're all kind of water-based projects, like beakers and bodies floating in liquid.
Yes.
They're all water-based things.
Yes.
You expect the monster, the creature, to come out and do a sort of
was obviously
one of those Berkeley dances,
Busby
Berkeley pool things. Those dances.
I can imagine you lying in bed at night thinking, "Gee, just imagine if Busby Berkeley made Hammer movies."
Movies, yeah.
Wow, Busby Berkeley horror movies.
Yeah. Well, why not? I don't, Hey, if it works, it works. Who cares? So Cushing was sort of like horror film royalty, and more than Christopher Lee, I think, in many people's minds. Christopher Lee embodied, certain things, primarily Dracula. That's why he was very happy to give up Dracula.
How many times did he do it? God.
A lot, but obviously there's a little bit more scope with Van Helsing and Dr. Frankenstein and stuff.
I thought he was the best Van Helsing of all time, personally.
Yeah. Well, you just said he was the best Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, he just looked like he was born to do the role.
Yeah.
Basil, don't get me wrong, Basil Rathbone was fantastic.
Yeah.
But this guy sort of never got out of character. I mean, he didn't have the dumb...
Dr. Watson.
Yeah. And he had to sort of crack jokes and sort of...
he was only in one film.
What?
As Sherlock Holmes, wasn't he?
It was a TV film, wasn't it? TV film.
Oh,
it's a Jack the Ripper story, isn't it?
I haven't seen that then. All right, I'm thinking of Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah, it was definitely in that. I've seen that. I remember the poster.
Yeah.
And he never had to shave his sideburns ever.
No.
Big long sideburns. Remember looking at his sideburns thinking, gee, they're longer than Elvis's.
Yeah, well, it was the era, wasn't it, that mutton chops.
Yeah.
The side levers. Whatever they call them. Sideburns, side levers.
But all the other British actors who had them in their movies, they just looked like hairy dogs. But he had a gentleman's refinement. Even the way he smoked the pipe. I remember the pipe was special.
Well, he everything. That's the other thing with his stagecraft. He used a lot of props.
Yeah.
And the props meant something to the character.
Yes.
So, with Kurosawa's direction to to his actors to have like a single action that, like in Yojimbo, he made
Toshiro
Mifune. Sorry, yeah, he made him have that sort of itch,
neck thing.
Yeah, that sort of twitch.
Yeah, that neck.
That shrug.
Neck twist.
What was that all about? It was like, weird, but yet it made the character memorable. So Cushing had the same idea for his characters.
The Americans.
Something memorable.
The Americans love that sort of stuff. They especially a tagline, I remember watching the Searchers for the first time, and I just read the biography of
John Wayne. John Ford.
No, Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was in it.
No, they came out of the movie.
Right.
And his mate loved it. Him and his mate loved it. They're just kids. And by the time they got home, they'd written "That'll Be the Day," because John Wayne in the Searchers keeps saying "That'll be the day," And so by the time they got home, they'd written that song. So
that's really cool. I like that. I wonder if there are any stories of
the Americans like the what they call them over there? Not taglines. They're just
memorable lines.
Lines, yeah.
Yeah, they kind of define the character with one sentence.
Yeah.
With one saying.
And I remember this character, in his roles, this Goomer was always turning his face sideways in shots while he was listening intently to somebody with his puff sleeves. And you'd see his a lot of side shots, in profile, lots of profile shots of him.
Yeah.
Whereas you didn't see many profile shots of actors, because I think they preferred to have their best sides, and I don't want to do that.
Oh no, he had a presence, and he was in charge of his presence. So I don't think whatever angle that he was shot in, I think he was in charge. He's the kind of guy. Obviously Christopher Lee for other reasons because he's intimidating, but this guy, you just believe everything that he does. There's just a certain expertise and an ease of the character or the characterization that he plays, that you just I think directors would have a really good time working with him, because he'd just get it straight away. Not many takes.
He didn't do any stuff in America, did he? Didn't go to America.
I don't know. I can't.
I don't think he did.
So.
There's no memory of him in American films.
Yeah, but he was just really busy.
Or European films. He was busy. A lot of Americans in their...
Christopher Lee made Spanish films.
Yeah, they all went somewhere. Like in the off season. The Americans came over to Italy.
Yeah.
Broderick Crawford, George Sanders, and Richard Basehart. They all went to Italy and made films.
Yeah. Yeah, Richard Basehart. That was an interesting role. That
in a Fellini film.
In a Fellini film.
Illustrator.
Yeah, it was a bit of a... That's unusual. Jeez, wow.
Totally dubbed. Totally dubbed.
Oh yeah, obviously, but still.
Because the Italians never use sound on set.
No.
It's all put in later.
Yeah. They're really, to credit them though, they're really good at that. Really, really good.
Except for footsteps.
Yeah.
You very rarely hear people walking down the street and you hear their footsteps, but you can always hear them in Italian movies.
Yeah. And they're all patent leather shoes.
Well, the Italians are
squeaky,
known for their shoes.
Yeah.
But the Italian shoes and is it Filipino? They're the best shoes in the world.
Really,
Two countries.
I had no idea.
It's definitely Italy.
All right.
You've given him a Ginger Meg's
have I?
Jacket.
A jacket.
Yeah. You're going to put dots on his tie?
Well, yeah, I suppose.
You don't have to.
I wasn't going to play it up, but I'll let that dry and then I'll put some dots on it.
It's a really fine drawing you've done. I hope that the camera captures it all.
Yeah.
Is it?
Is it recording?
It is. Yeah, your hands moving on the monitor.
Well, the monitor's not the thing that's recording at the moment. The monitor's
okay, all right.
I'm just sporting some new
So,
software.
do you want to tell everybody? Do you want to tell everybody what's behind the camera? Do you want to tell?
Nah, let them find out eventually.
For the techies out there to tell them.
Nah, let them find out.
Let them find out themselves. Yeah.
I'm slowly teaching myself the workings of a small TV studio. Yeah. Yeah, I hate technical talk, jargon, stuff like that. It's not really me. It doesn't really explain what's going on. So, see how when I get into sort of little tight corners like I'm doing with this, I can tell my conversation is becoming shorter. I'm trying to cut in around the mutton chops.
Yeah, well, you've made yourself a tough job there.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so
well, that's the hardest
my favourite film of his performance, I think he had to work really hard to sell that concept, and it was something that he was a little bit uncomfortable with, like, stealing souls. Personally, it was
against his personal religion.
It was, yeah. I think he probably made him a little bit uncomfortable. But cutting off heads, no problem. Unzipping brains, no problem.
Very efficient.
And most of Frankenstein got back to that idea again with the rest of the Frankenstein films that he did.
He didn't have too much blood on his apron. It's very neat.
No, but it's really his attitude, more than any other character that he's ever played. This was magic. Watching him interact with the other actors and putting them in their place. Right? How dare you question the doctor?
That's right. It was a well-earned arrogance.
Yeah. So I think usually in every film, he's destroyed by either his monster or his arrogance, and which is ultimately, I guess, the same.
So arrogance
is
self-destructive, is it?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So I guess it's the same thing in a way, but it just made you feel that he's not really dead. He's gonna come back from.
Can you imagine him playing Doctor Who?
Yeah, he was a good Doctor Who too. A lot of Doctor Who fans don't really like him as Doctor Who, and even I remember as a kid when I saw it, all the other kids saying, "What? He's not Doctor Who. He's not William Hartnell." Why didn't they get William Hartnell? Well, William Hartnell actually. The story is William Hartnell was busy. Yeah, that's the problem.
He's probably pretty sick too, wasn't he?
No. Okay. He was busy. So they did.
He played gangsters, didn't he?
Yeah.
Hartnell played.
I haven't seen that.
Cold-hearted gangsters.
Well, he was in Carry On, Sergeant. He was a good sergeant in that. It was good. That was a good film, good character. But his version of Doctor Who, he did it in 2 films, and it was really, really popular and really unpopular. It was unpopular with the Whovians.
The Whovians?
Yeah. But I wasn't a dedicated Whovian, so I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting performance. So it was quite a treat to see him as Doctor Who, you know. I enjoyed it very much. I haven't done that. So...
Little triangle there.
Yeah, cutting in. There we go. Let's try to get some...
There's vicious rumours going around that tomorrow you're going to draw...
Who?
Someone called Christopher Lee.
I hadn't thought about that.
Oh, you hadn't thought about it? Oh.
That's an interesting...
You can't have one without the t'other.
I haven't drawn Christopher before.
Oh. You're going to put teeth on him, you know, sharp ones?
I don't know. It depends on what I find
He's got
research.
an interesting face because they shoot him from below and his face sort of like gets stretched up, you know?
A lot of the shots, yeah, because they... we'll talk more about that tomorrow, but there's... Okay, the thing with Christopher Lee is that he refused to wear, and the same thing also with Bela Lugosi. This is the same reason. They wouldn't wear vampire teeth because their reasoning is that you don't need vampire teeth to get the effect of a vampire.
But he did.
No.
He did.
In a couple of, like, gnashy sort of teethy things, shots, but usually he didn't have it.
He's got blood on his mouth.
Yeah, but he'd lower his bottom lip so that you wouldn't see his fangs. So he usually didn't wear fangs.
Oh.
That's what his whole idea of came from Bela Lugosi saying, you know,
fangs,
he didn't need fangs to be Dracula.
Fangs for the memory of that story.
Yeah. But we talk about that another time. All right, here we go, Peter.
Ooh, do you fit it in?
Yep.
Just, okay.
This is Peter Cushing. And maybe put a little bit of lighter effects here and there, perhaps. That'll do. So light plays across these forms. You can see his intensity and his... singular purpose. There's beautiful evenness in his wrinkles. There's this division across his nose, which is, very, very much
looks
to
like
his advantage.
He survived an axe attack.
Yeah, but, and there's this sort of raised eyebrow. So he's really very, very intense thinker. You could tell the amount of thoughts that have gone through his head have played on, like dripping tap through... eons of erosion have created these beautiful lines, multiple lines.
They could see before and after, but...
This is a nice... I like it. There's a nice little picture of His Royalness. His Royal Highness.
His Royal Highness.
Yeah.
You obviously prefer him to Christopher Lee? Or they're different animals?
They're different animals. So, yeah, one is a tiger and the other is a lion.
We know who the tiger is. We know who the tiger is, yeah.
So, this is Franz Kantor, Peter Cushing, and...
Jim Bridges.
And this is one last time. This is the before. This is the after. And I will catch you...
on the flip side.
Bye-bye.